Hello. So today I wanted to talk about shortcuts to problem solving. Um, this is a discussion about philosophical razors and how they can be used for in-person argumenting to make your arguments more sound and come forth more effectively. So what are they? They are simple principles which allow for philosophers or argumentors to eliminate untrue or unlikely explanations for a phenomenon. They work in both the posterior and the anterior of an argument. So whenever you're synthesizing an argument, some of them help you make your argument as simple and effective as possible, and some of them in the other side of your argument in interpreting other people's what to look out for. It shaves off the unnecessary assumptions associated with argumenting. And this is important whenever your decision has to be made quickly, like you're in the heat of the moment of an argument and you can't go and, pull up your sources. Nobody has a list of all of their sources in their pocket that they can pull up. It's not feasible. You have to be able to use these sort of system of ideas to communicate effectively. So the first one we have is Occam's razor here, which Occam tells us that the simplest solution is the best solution. So whenever you're arguing, you should try to display your argument in as simple terms as possible and concisely, because the eloquence of simplicity is easier to interpret and understand over some complex or flowery argument, which can lead to confusion and really hurt, I guess, the weight of your argument that you're throwing. You could have an argument which is true and backed up by verifiable claims, but if you can't communicate it properly and people don't understand it, then it was a pointless argument. So moving forward, we have Hanlon's razor. Never attribute to malice what can be attributed to incompetence. So when you're arguing and someone is being antagonistic, and it it kind of helps your argument to not see those actions as deliberate. They can intend to, I suppose, mock your character or sort of hurt your worldview. This is kind of relevant. Say people are arguing politics and someone's political view is antagonistic to yours. You're immediately offended. You see malice in that, or they're being condescending in their tone or whatever. It's much easier to attribute that to ignorance. Did they, in the split second that they were saying their argument, consider all of your feelings or how you would perceive their argument? No, they didn't. They were ignorant to that fact. So you shouldn't attribute malice to them when you could just say, oh, they were ignorant of that. We can move on with the argumenting instead of arguing over the semantics of how I felt. You can't argue feelings, for instance. Hitchens' razor. What can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without it. So if people are making baseless claims, they don't hold any weight. You should always try to back up an argument with evidence, like say, look here, look here. Otherwise, it's only speculation or opinion. This is applicable to, I guess, larger sense of arguments like grand scope, for phenomenon X, Y is occurring. And we know that based on, I remember reading a study from here and here. That's how you can cite sources. The credibility of your citations can be further elaborated on if it's, that consequential, but it it kind of is backing your character if you're citing that. But if people, or you can't dismiss someone's argument if I say like it's going to rain tomorrow because I looked at the weather, and someone says, no, it's not, that's not a good contradiction to my argument. There's no base behind it. If you're going to either propose or unpropose an argument, you need to contradict it with evidence. You can't just say no. Newton's flaming laser sword. This one's kind of funny. It doesn't follow like the paradigm of everyone else's, but what cannot be settled by experimentation is not worth debating. So this really talks about the repeatability of an action, and to assert causality in particularly scientific thinking or statistical reasoning. If you can't repeat a phenomenon, then it's not credible. People, I guess, like to talk about this is just about the quality of a study or an analysis, in the sense that there's a sense of formality whenever you're proposing a argument. This is more, I suppose, in the circles of academia for credibility, to show that one thing is really causing another. And we do that through repetition. For instance, Newton's laws of, an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. That's a scientific law. It's repeatable in all across the universe. It's a description of that. Its repeatability is worth debating on that sense. However, if it wasn't contrived from reality, or bases of faith, which you can't prove, you just must believe or not believe, it's not worth debating on that, because faith isn't contrived. For instance, it's synthesized by the person from their influences. Hume's guillotine. What ought to be cannot be deduced from what is. So whenever you're arguing, we all have these inherent biased idealizations of the world and how we want the world to be, or how we want, I guess, our fields to be. We can't let those eclipse our judgment. We have to be pragmatic whenever we're arguing, not let emotion, like in Helen's razor, cloud our judgment. This is just another part of that. We can't let we have to be very objective whenever we are arguing. Otherwise, our partisanship will tend to drag down our argument and increase our inauthenticity. Grice's razor. It is best to address what the speaker meant than what they literally said. So a lot of people like to do this on the internet. If you go in a YouTube comment section, people will be arguing semantics, like, you used the wrong there, it's Y-O-U apostrophe R-E, not your, that's not an argument. You need to actually address the claim. You're not making any logical argument. Okay, somebody misspelled a word. That doesn't debunk their whole argument. That just, if you have to pick at that, you're not winning the argument. You're just being a semantic asshole. Gelman's razor. Assume every article contains a percentage of false information. So this comes down to how much you can really trust something. And, this goes for stakes. Yes, people can go out and study something. And whenever you're reading that, everybody has a sort of stake whenever they're publishing material. It's either they want to get paid or notoriety, or they want influence over that. So there's always some salesmanship in articles that kind of bend the truth in their way. Nothing is truly objective because we are but mortals. So whenever you are conducting, I guess, a sort of investigation, and you are looking for the truth. It's not your truth. I hate when people say it's your truth. The truth is the truth. It is how we interpret it and skew the truth for our benefit when it becomes your truth. The truth is taking someone else's observations and finding the subjective part of it, which is true to reality, the truth. Popper's razor. For a theory to be scientific, it must be falsifiable. This is another point of faith again. It's not a good argument to argue faith. Oh, you don't believe in this, therefore, you're just wrong. If you had faith in this, then you'd be right. There's no point in arguing it. It's not falsifiable. There is no falsibility behind faith. You either believe it or you don't. Whereas in something more scientific or something which is contrived from reality, you can falsify it. For instance, in the prior razor, I found this to be true, and the author behind this argument, in a sense, imbued their own personality behind it. Or, they're saying, oh, we found X, and this really conforms with our research goal of Y. Once you've reached the point of no debate, you're just no longer reasonable. Having faith eclipse your judgment is wrong. It's tribalistic. You should always be objective and accepting, even of wrong ideas. Some people would say there's a sliver of truth in wrong ideas, but I would say understanding wrong ideas that you and are falsifiably wrong helps you in making your argument. You can provide concession and refutation, like, yes, X exists as an argument, but it is wrong because Y. If you have to have faith to believe in the outcome, then it's not contrived. You're forsaking, I guess, our process of understanding. For instance, the Sagan standard. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So this talks about sort of the circle of people who want to uproot our current understandings. They're in the more esoteric sides of understanding, and they just want to uproot the well-understood current perception, which we know is to be ironclad, and it's verifiable across multiple people. But these claims are borderline conspiracy, borderline insanity. They're just crazy, baseless claims. Whenever you see these claims, they need to be predicated on very rigid, infallible evidence, or a unique perspective. I'll go back to Newton's law, which I brought up. An object stays in motion unless acted upon, or whatever. So, yes, we know that to exist in the macro level where we exist. A car will stay in motion until you hit the brakes or whatever. But people working on the subatomic particles, it may not be so. On that level, there is very strong evidence for that to go against what we currently understand. Is an example of that. However, making outrageous claims like DNA is not the genetic material because we were coated by a spaghetti monster in his image. It's baseless. It takes a leap of faith. The whole point of many of these razors is to separate our monkey brain faiths from our ability to perceive from reality. Tarswell's razor. The more emotional you are, the less your judgment can be trusted. Having stake in an outcome is bias. This is addressing bias, and one of the largest forms of bias is your emotional staking it. You need something to be right because it's indicative of your character, or you've internalized a result as truth. Then you're looking for things to validate that. That's not scientific. You're just feeding your bias in a warped perception of reality, and then you can't make decisions properly because you've been learned off of fallible information. You're not right. You've just looked for things which have confirmed your bias. That is the basis of contemporary conspiracy theories. They're not particularly objective. They're just self-feeding. And the rusty razor. This is actually one I came up with myself. So anything which can be half-assed should be half-assed. And this is one of the many tricks which have gotten me through collegiate education. But what it basically surmises to is you should save your strength and willpower for the times where it counts and is most advantageous to either advancing your career or producing results people care about, instead of full-assing useless activities. So this is basically a tactic which you can use to make your time count and maximize the cost benefit from your endeavors. So this is the end of my presentation. I hope you learned something about philosophical razors, and have a good day.